The cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. Our contemplations of the cosmos stir us. We know we are approaching the grandest of mysteries.
The atoms that comprise life on Earth. The atoms that make up the human body are traceable to those stars.
I'm going to tell you about the most incredible place. And you know what? You're walking on it.
That this world that we imagine in this room might be used to gain access to other rooms, to other worlds previously unimaginable.
Who are you?
You are not alone.
The life you've led is not, in fact, the totality of what is possible for you. And if you could release yourself from bonds you don't even see, you would then be able to see the world as it truly is.
There's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
What is reality? Reality is this.
One of the most pleasant things in physics is recognizing the absolute beauty of nature when you look below the surface, when you see nature described in mathematical terms.
We all have this sensation that we're all kind of on a river of time that's taking us from moment to moment to moment, endlessly rushing forward toward the future. However common that experience, maybe I have that experience. That's how I think about time in everyday life. But when we look at the equations of physics, we don't find any evidence for a flow of time. All we find in the equations of physics is that there's moment after moment after moment, but there's no sense in which those moments flow into each other. It's as if that river of time is more like a frozen river, where every moment is forever locked into one location, and it's just out there, all of time being out there. It's as if, none of us have a problem with the idea of all of space being out there. We can picture that in our mind's eye, all of space out there. This way of thinking about time suggests that we should also think that all of time is out there too.
It is always now. The past is a memory. It's a thought arising in the present. The future is merely anticipated. It is another thought arising now. Okay, what we truly have is this moment and this.
Your life consists entirely of the present moment. If you truly realize the significance of that statement, your entire life consists of the present moment. Your life is never not this moment.
Think of something that makes you happy. Picture someone you love. Picture them being happy. Notice how that begins to brighten the mind.
Thought is linear. It goes one word after another. It's strung out in a line. We think thought, 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 thought in a line like this, one after another. Whereas when we see to what is going on entirely. We take in a volume when we see. We take in a great area. Nature is a volume rather than something strung out in a line. Thought, as I said, is slower because it goes in a line, thought after thought. And also thought is abstract.
I suddenly got it. I understood suddenly how thought was just an illusory thing. And how thought is responsible for, if not all, most of the suffering we experience. And then I suddenly felt like I was looking at these thoughts from another perspective. And I wondered, who is it that's aware that I'm thinking? And suddenly I was thrown into this expansive, amazing feeling of freedom from myself, from my problems. I saw that I was bigger than what I do. I was bigger than my body. I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe. And ever since that day, I've been trying to get back there.
There is no such thing as a self. The self is not a thing, but a process. It is that process that gives you the conscious experience of being someone. What does it mean to be someone?
It feels like this. It feels as though there is a me inside there, inside my head, looking out at a world out there. It feels as though this me has consciousness and has free will. Now, as soon as you start to think about that scientifically, you realize that that has to be wrong.
The majority, the vast majority of what we think and do and believe is generated by parts of our brain that we have no acquaintance with, no access to at all.
It's all parallel processing. It's all information going through in complicated ways.
More than 80% of the 7 billion people on this planet are deeply living in religious, metaphysical images of man. And they are not ready for this. They have never heard of a neural correlate of consciousness, and they don't want to hear about it. And they have never heard about a self-model, and many of them don't want to hear about it.
What am I without my story?
Whoever you are not your thought patterns.
The first thing is to just get to know your mind, not in a special way, like with fireworks or whatever, but getting to know your annoying, boring, destructive mind.
If you want to understand your mind, sit down and observe it.
But as you get deeper into this observation, you have to be with a lot of ugly things. A lot of things that you didn't want to know about yourself. Your violent fantasies, your sexual fantasies, your past trauma. You have to face all of this.
There is no snake in the corner of the room. It's actually a rope.
we are not truly separate. We are linked to each other and to our past and to history. We are part of a system, and therefore what we do matters. You can't take credit for your talents, but it matters that you use them. You can't really be blamed for your weaknesses, but it matters that you correct them.
But ultimately, it's all a lie. Human beings are food for worms. The fact that we're going to die imbues even our greatest ecstasies with a sting, with a burn.
I've had such a good life.
This part of my life, this little part, is called happiness.
See, these little things aren't so little. That's one of the points that I really want you to sort of ponder, is that the little things and the little moments, they aren't little. They're life.
The time will come when with elation you'll greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to yourself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, who you have ignored for another. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. This is not attaining some ideal. This is recognizing who you already are and the beauty that's already you.
And I mean, think about it. When you were in your mother's womb, was there any idea that there was anything wrong with you or anything you needed to achieve or improve? We need to train ourselves to take a break from that mental narrative that can be so burdensome.
All anybody really wants is to be seen and heard and treated with kindness.
The cruelty of the modern world, the cruelty of New York City, for example, is that this is a city where people give you 30 seconds and not much longer if you're not careful. And that's very challenging. It cuts people up inside. It literally drives you crazy.
Now, we know from a lot of studies that early adversity and stress can be a somewhat generalized risk factor for a number of psychiatric disorders.
We are, in effect, trying to understand a multitude of conditions that lead to the same set of symptoms. The lesson, it appears, is that one map alone won't guide us back to mental health. It's not one single problem, and it will never have one single solution. But it turns out that you and I have the power to alter the map of our own brains. Protecting critical brain circuits and encouraging neuron growth through exercise, regulating sleep and diet, avoiding excess caffeine, alcohol, or other substances of abuse, and staying emotionally connected to other human beings. It all has to be part of the program.
Using the brain's intrinsic plasticity and using behavior, the repetition of behavior changes the way the brain is wired and then the way the brain is functioning. And that's what we mean by recovery.
To be depressed all the time, what does that take? Repetition, practice, training. Because depending on the environmental stimulus, they're getting those neurons to fire correctly, and those neurons firing correctly are producing a certain chemical, initiating a feeling.
There are real biological factors that can make it worse, but the main causes of depression and anxiety are in the way we're living. It's a way of saying, I can't cope with this anymore. Particularly people who feel they've been pushed to the bottom of hierarchies. It's a way of just going, okay, I retreat. I don't want this fight anymore. You've beaten me. It's a kind of very strong evolutionary impulse where you feel you're under attack to just submit in the hope that the sources of the stress and anxiety will then go away.
Often people pinpoint a nervous breakdown to one particular event, but you find that they've brought loads and loads of problems with them that have been building up to that point. Often that is the thing that pushes them just that little bit over the edge, but it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's rare that that one event has caused everything.
You're having these crazy thoughts. You know, you're just such a wreck.
You're so collapsed inside. It's a feeling of collapse. It's that you've no more strength. You can't do it anymore.
Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission.
This is not a dress rehearsal. This is your life. Yes, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is your life.
This is life. You get one shot at this. You get to do it and do it well. There are employers everywhere. You will be fine. If you need to get up, quit, do what you need to do, but you have to take care of you because they are not going to take care of you. They're going to take care of them.
Experience has taught us that we have only one enduring weapon in our struggle against mental illness: the emotional discovery and emotional acceptance of the truth in the individual and unique history of our childhood.
Well, yeah, we've got problems, but we're okay. And our parents were pretty good. They're okay. When in fact, the answer was, we were significantly traumatized. We are significantly wounded psychologically, and we're unaware of some very important things. And our lives are stressed frequently and chronically in ways that can be prevented once we acknowledge our childhood trauma, because such trauma passes down the generations until somebody spots it, admits it, and breaks it.
The truth of the matter is that the kid is carrying the difficulties of the family, reacting to what's going on in his or her family life.
The traumatized child acts out in a wild way. I need to start to build a relationship with that hurt child. And when that hurt child starts to feel like finally there's an adult in the picture who has some limits, who can say no in a meaningful way, like, no, you can't just act out. And I know why you're acting out, because this happened in your childhood, these wounds, these betrayals, mainly by your mother and father. So you should feel angry. They broke you. It's just that we're starting to realize that you fix it.
The truth of our childhood is enormously important to us. We better find out the truth of our childhood.
From the view of the emotional needs of my inner child, there was massive deprivation. There was massive wounding. I wasn't really getting my deep emotional needs met. And that was traumatizing to me. And what I've come to realize in looking at the world and looking at other people from the perspective of the child's needs, that I am not alone in that. That means that they have to look at their own history of trauma, and they have to get in touch with their own internal pain that's been split off for decades. They have to look at the horrible things that their parents did to them. And this entails breaking their idealization of their parents, to whatever degree they idealize their parents. This entails looking at their childhood and really seeing the denial that was everywhere in their family. And it also entails looking at themselves as adolescents and as adults and seeing how much denial they were and are still in. And to be blunt, who wants to do that? Well, if someone has a desperation to get real and a desperation to be their true self and to totally connect with who they really are, then they do want to do that.
If you are one of the first members in your family who is awakening, it's actually a little bit more challenging. It's like a big gift and a big responsibility, because you're changing the nature of how, not only how you were raised, but how the future generation will be raised.
They did what they could. Most parents do what they can. You always need to look at their parents and where they've come from.
So you can remain compassionate to their difficult backstory, but also maintain those boundaries and expectations to protect yourself.
Here's the deal, okay? People change when they want to change. That's it. Everyone can change. Every human has the potential to change themselves, to change their ways. Most people choose not to. You have the right to happiness, to peace of mind. You have the right to follow your dreams and to be hopeful for the future. Don't waste it on someone who doesn't care about that.
They may actually not care about your feelings.
You have to set real boundaries. Those boundaries start with what are the expectations, what is acceptable behavior, what is acceptable treatment, and that starts with you setting the standards for yourself.
Don't throw your heart on the table before someone has earned your respect.
Cut that toxic narcissist out of your life. Understand that it will be a mix of feelings, but also recognize that being near anything toxic is never good for us. It's like losing a lot of psychological weight and now living in a state of clarity and self-compassion.
You can't be in relationship with that person. You can be in relationship with them from a distance, because anything that you do is really going to fall on deaf ears. They're not going to see that you are really there to care for them. They're going to see it as a hostile move towards them.
Think about the difficult people in your life. Think of them as wounded and unaware.
Support the pharmaceutical industry, deny the traumas that cause the misery, and pass them all on to your kids.
People who've experienced often neglect or rejection or trauma or other psychological nastiness in their early years, childhood and adolescence, they come out depressed and they come out anxious. But one way or another, they're not feeling good. They're not feeling happy. They're not feeling whole. They're not feeling complete. And so they try stuff and something makes them feel better. And that's self-medication. You keep on trying it, you keep on doing it because it keeps making you feel better, and presto, you're addicted.
We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
The first question is always not why the addiction, but why the pain. And what you find is emotional loss or trauma. But you know, whether it's a sex addiction or internet or relationship or shopping or work addiction, these are all attempts to get away from distress.
So think of any kind of chemical we use, it allows us on some level to disconnect from our reality.
What's your intention? Are you trying to get away from something? Are you trying to hide from something or numb out and not look at something?
Are you constantly judging, blaming, criticizing yourself and others? Does your mind incessantly seek out stimulus? Or are you fulfilled just being in silence?
The question you should pose to yourself is, what are these patterns I'm falling into? Why do I get angry at these little things all the time? That's not you, that's a pattern, and it's alterable.
Maybe some of those fixed ideas that have been operating inside of you since you were a little kid and conditioning the way you interact with other people, with the world, maybe those are not all so right. And you could start to let go of some of that a little bit.
We have mistaken the experience of pleasure for the experience of happiness. And so we continue to drive our interest in pleasure at the expense of our happiness. And you can't undo the paradigm unless you understand it.
people can sell you pleasure. No one can sell you happiness.
Drugs and these things are wonderful. They're wonderful when you try them first. They're not around for all these millennia for no reason. First time, mostly pleasure, very little pain, maybe a hangover. And as you increase and keep using whatever it is, the pleasure part decreases and the pain part, the price you pay, increases until the balance is completely the other way and it's almost all pain and there's hardly any pleasure. At that point, you would hope, then the intellect says, oh, this doesn't work anymore. I'm going to die and I'll do something. But you need people around you who can help you, and you need something to live for. You have to have something to look forward to.
I've been sober for 13 and a half years, and I don't intend to take a drink again.
It feels like a low level of despair you live in, where you're not getting any answers, but you're living okay.
Understanding and insight are only worthwhile if they translate into a real change for you.
To aspire to superior wisdom has to be compatible with checking in on an almost daily and hourly basis with one's insanity, one's idiocy, one's childlike nature. And the notion of the guru who is somehow always poised, always appropriate, is wrong.
Anxiety might make us panic, or it might blossom into an accurate analysis of what's wrong, and so to peace of mind.
For anxiety in its more ordinary range, the deep way to respond to it is to become willing to feel it, to cease to interpret it as important, and to function in the midst of it. And then it will pass. Anxiety rises and falls like any other emotion, and if you're not continually thinking the thoughts that make you anxious, it actually can't stay around very long. And this is true of other unpleasant emotions like anger and sadness. They're continually resurrected by our thoughts, and we're spending most of our time thinking without knowing that we're thinking. So mindfulness in particular is a very good antidote to this problem. But the trick is you can't apply it as an antidote. You can't be mindful of anxiety so that it will go away. You can't push it away with meditation. Or at least that attempt is more likely to fail. What you're really after in those moments is genuine equanimity, real acceptance of the energy of this emotion. Become interested in it. Become willing to feel it. Just let it burn bright in you. And discover that it doesn't matter. It simply comes and it goes, and you can function.
Every time we take a breath in, we have to let it go.
Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
My deep pain led me to reflect deeply on my circumstances. It also led me to reflect on nature because it provides a guide for what's true. So I thought a lot about how things work, which helped to put me and my own circumstances in perspective.
Frequently, something tragic and terrible befalls you, and you fall apart, and you learn something profound as a consequence, and you put yourself back together, and when you come back out, you're more than you were when you went in. If you ever really learn something, it usually means that you have to recognize that you're wrong in some important way.
Yeah, it's damn tough, but so what? It's the difficult things that develop us. The way you handle this emotional scar will determine if it becomes a great personal story of overcoming adversity or a permanent emotional deformity.
You have to do everything you can. You have to work your hardest. And if you do, if you stay positive, you have a shot at a silver lining.
Very possible that you could have something hard happen and bounce back to be the person that you were. But actually, there's something beyond that. It's also possible to go and become stronger, to grow, and to be more integrated than you were before. To not be less than you were or even the same that you were, but to be more. And that is positive growth, also called post-traumatic growth.
The way I'm thinking, the way I feel, the way I look at everything and conceive and perceive everything is different now.
The invitation in all of this work is that we can take more responsibility for our own brains and shape our brains in a more intentional way by cultivating healthy habits of mind.
It all turns on feeling powerful. And what I mean by power is not power over others. That's social power. Personal power is power over the self. So it's power to access the resources that you already possess.
I deserve good things. I am entitled to my share of happiness. I refuse to beat myself up. Beating myself up, which is something I do, and that's okay. No, it's not okay.
There's a side of us that wants to understand, that longs for calm and wisdom. And then there's the side of us that's drawn to darkness, chaos, sexuality, and madness. Accept both of these parts of ourselves and don't try and snuff one of them out.
The human mind is a 3.5-pound gland that pumps neurons constantly and deals with itself by responding to stimulus. That's what we're designed to do, evolving slowly. Even Darwin's going, I have hopes. I had such high hopes. It's all part of it.
I hate this place. Nothing works here. The medications don't work. I've been here for 7 years. Nothing works here. I hate this place. Nothing works here. The medications don't work. I've been here for 7 years.
What are you doing?
You think I'm crazy? I'm not crazy. I just believe in you.
Did you read that book I told you about? You know, about expanding your mind? Oh, no, you didn't do that either.
I went to law school. Sort of. All I can say is, you can't figure out a person. Definitely not yourself. You can't maximize a life. What you can do is try to be honest in the choices that you make. Be true to yourself, no matter how embarrassing those choices are.
Every time you fail, you are being given an opportunity to learn. Don't waste that opportunity.
You have not failed. You can simply reinterpret and say, I have learned something here. This is not for me. So, but why believe the lies that your mind produces?
The optimal internal state for learning is relaxed alertness, because you have to be focused, you have to be alert, but you can't be stressed. And we know, too, that the optimal educational environment is characterized by high challenge, low threat. That we're bored if we aren't sufficiently challenged, but if we're threatened, our brain doesn't work.
A wandering mind is an unhappy mind.
Take the first step.
The first step, before anybody else in the world believes it, is you have to believe it.
You really have to figure out a way to do it yourself. I mean, you have to demonstrate that you can do what you want to do.
So you want people who are adaptable, who can be fluid, who aren't weak, who have an inner strength and a core to them, but they can bend, they can learn, they can adapt, they can change. You want to see people who are empathetic, who know how to get along with other people. So if you have two people to choose and one has a glittering resume, but the other person understands human nature and is superior in a social sense, and can also has a good work ethic, you choose that other person. You don't choose necessarily the person with that glittering resume.
The best investment, I would say, is in emotional intelligence and in mental balance and these kinds of skills of how to keep changing throughout your life, how to keep learning throughout your life. These are the most important tools.
That feeling that you're on the freeway and you're stuck in a traffic jam and you want to just take that exit because it feels so good to be in control, that's where motivation comes from. This subversive instinct, if you can encourage that, then you learn how to self-motivate.
People pursue success in business, fitness, or relationships mainly because they're anticipating some sort of reward.
It's mating and food. You don't want to become somebody's dinner, you want to find dinner, and you want to have sex. Good night, everybody.
People traditionally have associated happiness with external fortune. You know, a new car, a better job, a lover. I think instead we should be working for contentment. Contentment to me is an inner sense of fulfillment that's relatively independent of external circumstances.
The real key to happiness is to understand the truth about yourself and about reality. Somebody who really knows who he is and what is my place and what is reality, such a person, I think, is really happy. And such a person is really, at least on the way, to being liberated from suffering and from misery.
The single most important determinant of happiness is close relations. Close relations, they limit us. They constrain us. When you are constrained by your network of connections to other people, all of a sudden, you are not faced with an infinite number of options. You're faced with a smaller number of options.
There's certain things you could do that gives your life purpose and meaning. Meaningful work, a reason to get up in the morning, get out the door, and go out and do something productive. Having some kind of group of people that care about you, that love you, that you care about them and you love them. And then there's a sense of awe and wonder at things that are bigger than us.
Your life is not happening to you. You are creating it. That's liberating. It's yours to make of it what you want.
That's beauty. That's an eagle. Woo! I don't have anybody telling me what to do. I don't have to do nothing.
Do what you want to.
If you're taking care of yourself to the best of your ability, and you've got your psychology down, and your life is awesome, I mean, who would not want to be a part of that? Of course they would. Everyone wants to be a part of that. What people are repelled by is neediness.
It's never a perfect story. Never. Every couple has issues. The only question is which are the issues you want to deal with. You pick this person, you'll deal with those issues. You pick that person, you'll deal with other issues.
Every human being who has ever walked the planet is, in their own way, radically imperfect and broken when observed from close up.
It's time for us as a people to start making some changes. Let's change the way we eat.
Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And those 7 words tell you all you need to know about how to eat in a healthy way.
Exercise literally is medicine. It changes the brain and the body in beneficial ways that are more powerful than any pill you can take. Yeah, I said it. More powerful than any pill you can. In fact, I'm going to say something even more controversial. If you could take the neurological and physiological effects of exercise and capture them in a pill, all the beneficial effects on neural signaling in the brain, the anti-aging effects all the way down to the level of chromosomes in every cell of your body, the mental clarity enhancing effects, I believe, tell me if you think I'm crazy, I believe that pill would become the best-selling drug of all time.
Your health is your engine. The chassis, the tires, the brakes, the engine of your vehicle that you move through this life with. And that's fucking huge. That's huge for anything you're trying to pursue. If you don't have energy, not only will you not have the energy to pursue things, but you won't be able to do them the same way.
Doesn't matter whether you're sweeping the roads or you're chairman of Lloyd's. You've got to be passionate about what you do. Passionate about running, even at an old age.
You wouldn't believe it if I told you that I can run like the wind blows.
I don't want to win unless I know I've done my best, and the only way I know to do that is to run out front and flat out till I have nothing left.
The real purpose of running isn't to win a race. It's to test the limits of the human heart.
There's more to running than just putting one foot in front of the other. It's meditative and spiritual practice as well.
You can almost think of it as a kind of flow state. Going for a run is very good for your body, but the evidence is now stacking up that taking your mind for a run can be very beneficial too. The 3 pounds of grey jelly that we all carry around inside our skulls is just another part of your body. So it stands to reason that what you do with your body, with your muscles and your limbs, can have a great effect on the state of your brain and the state of mind. And so it reminds you that you can take control of your state of mind, your brain chemistry even.
Look, running is what you love to do. Running is what makes you happy. That doesn't necessarily mean that you enjoy every run, but at the same time, just because something is difficult or challenging doesn't mean it's not worthwhile.
And learn at times to merge with the universe, to identify with its vast, impersonal forces. We are the waters, the sky, the land, the currents.
It's a place in your head. Focus on the water. This permanently exists amidst the noise. Don't be afraid.
You have not the slightest idea of what I'm talking about, and it sounds like a load of nonsense. That probably means you're not quite ready yet, and won't try to convince you that you should be ready. And it also means that you just need a little bit more suffering before you're ready, so we will meet again in a few years' time.
See what is before you. See the here and now.
It's not so much do we see the world in the way that it really is, but do we actually even see it accurately? And the answer is no, we don't. So at this most basic level, we don't represent even the information we're getting in any accurate way. And the reason is because it was useful to see it this way. So we're seeing the utility of the data, not the data.
So all of a sudden that thing that you were in that was a car turns into this massive, complex, unbelievably complicated thing, and that's actually what it is. Your initial representation of it, it's really low resolution. It's like 1 bit, and then bang, it breaks down and poof, complexity. Complexity everywhere.
If you want to understand why did this behavior occur, you've got to take into account everything from 1 second before to 1 million years before. Okay, so what do you conclude from that? Ooh, it's complicated. Okay, that's very useful, but how about, ooh, it's complicated, and you better be real careful and real cautious before you decide you understand the causes of a behavior, especially if it's behavior that you judge harshly.
The mind moves beyond its particular self-interests and cravings. We start to think of other people in a more imaginative way. Rather than criticize and attack, we're free to imagine their behavior being driven by pressures derived from their own more primitive minds, which they're generally in no position to tell us about. Their temper or viciousness are, we now see, symptoms of hurt rather than of evil. It's an astonishing gradual evolution to develop the ability to explain others' actions by their distress rather than simply in terms of how it affects us. We perceive that the appropriate response to humanity is not fear, cynicism, or aggression, but always, when we can manage it, love. States of higher consciousness are, of course, desperately short-lived. We shouldn't in any case aspire to make them permanent, because they don't sit so well with the many important practical tasks we all need to attend to.
Nothing will be forever. So the trees. Enjoy these precious days. Whisper their leaves.
This is your good old days. It only gets worse from here on, okay? The good old days are these. Wait till you see what happens as you get older, okay?
We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they're never going to be born. The number of people who could be here in my place outnumber the sand grains of Sahara. If you think about all the different ways in which our genes could be permuted, you and I are quite grotesquely lucky to be here. The number of events that had to happen in order for you to exist, in order for me to exist. We are privileged to be alive, and we should make the most of our time on this world.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave close at day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end, no dark is right, because their words had fought no lightning they. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Nothing. Real nothingness, which has no size and no time. The sense that your soul is eternal makes you cowardly, because failure would stick with you forever, for really ever. Shame, embarrassment, disappointment, they would never leave you. A distant horizon encourages you to play it safe, live to fight another day. For, after all, there is always another day. If you can really picture the nothingness that awaits you, then what is there to be afraid of? We may have no meaning in the cosmic context of the universe, but we make our own meaning daily with each other. And this is the thought that leads to action. Your days are numbered. You don't know what that number is, but it's finite, so get busy with what it is you want to do. Time is running out.
You're all in. No matter what you do, you're all in. This is going to kill you. So I think you might as well play the most magnificent game you can while you're waiting, because do you have anything better to do?
The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race, the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. You get to decide how you're going to try to see it. This is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't.
Meaninglessness is a serious challenge. Even making sense of meaninglessness is itself a kind of discipline and achievement. The problem is, of course, you never reach it. You know, it's not a static, stationary telos or end or aim. It's a process that one never reaches. It's Sisyphean. You're going up the hill looking for better meanings or grander, more ennobling, enabling meanings, but you never reach it. You know, in that sense, you die without being able to have the whole.
Any philosophical problem can be seen in many different ways, and if you see it in different ways, your entire orientation toward the world changes.
I mean, the only thing that makes conversation possible is an openness to evidence and arguments, a willingness to update one's view of the world when better reasons are given. And that is an ongoing process, not a place we ever finally arrive.
Once we walked and he says, that's a brown-throated thrush. He says, know what the name of that bird is? A brown-throated thrush. In German, it's called a Fliegenflügel. In Chinese, it's called a Qinglongtong. In Japanese, a Tohatahara, and so on. When you know all the names in every language of that bird, you know nothing, but absolutely nothing about the bird.
Imagine prisoners that have spent their entire lives chained deep inside a cave. They have been chained so that they cannot see behind themselves, and they are forced to stare endlessly at the cave wall in front of them. This is the only world that the prisoners have ever known.
Even if they suspected there was something more, they were unwilling to leave what was familiar.
This, of course, does not make the world outside of the cave any less real.
It is the task of the enlightened not only to ascend to learning and to see the good, but to be willing to descend again to those prisoners and to share their troubles and their honors. They shall give of their help to one another, wherever each class is able to help the community.
One of the natural consequences of humanism, of the idea that the human race is one species, of the idea that every individual member of that species is a bearer of the dignity that humanity gives us, is a general spirit of inclusiveness, and that's always characterized humanist thinking.
The fundamental core difference, I believe, between humans and chimps, that humans ask why. It's what's driven us to discover gravity. It's what's driven us to probe into the mysteries of quasars. And it's the same thing that drives us to probe into the mysteries of each other in our everyday lives. Why does she keep doing that? Why does he keep behaving like that? He must think this. He must believe this. I don't understand. Why?
In many cultures, the customary answer is that a god or gods created the universe out of nothing. But if we wish to pursue this question courageously, we must, of course, ask the next question. Where did God come from? If we decide that this is an unanswerable question, why not save a step and conclude that the origin of the universe is an unanswerable question? Or, if we say that God always existed, why not save a step and conclude that the universe always existed, that there's no need for a creation, it was always here?
The purpose of life is here and now. You know, it doesn't matter what happens billions of years from now, or, you know, whether there's a God or not, whether there's an afterlife or not. It's irrelevant. This is the life that matters.
The significance of your life is something you create.
There is grandeur in this view of life. Whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved.
In all our searching, the only thing we've found that makes the emptiness bearable is each other.
So beautiful. I had no idea. Open your eyes.
I want to live a real life. I don't want to dream any longer.
They're alive. There's a herd of cattle, and they're all running. They're all running like in a stampede towards a canyon far off in the distance. And there's this giant herd of cattle all walking or running even towards this canyon. And you're part of that herd. And you don't even realize that what's going to happen is that soon enough, The canyon's not that close right now, but soon enough, that canyon's going to come. And when that whole herd gets there, they're going to fall off the fucking cliff. And you're going to come along for the ride. That's what mainstream society is that. And everyone who's plugged into that is going to fall off the fucking cliff. It's that dead serious.
Fuck up the mainstream.
We live in a society that, one way or the other, is always about instant relief, quick satisfaction, distraction. In other words, we live in a culture that is based on, both economically and psychologically, on not supporting people to be with themselves.
The individual has always had to struggle from being overwhelmed by the tribe. To be your own man is hard business. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself, the highest form of health there is.
Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth. Always feel that you count, and always feel that your life has ultimate significance.
We interrupt our programming. This is a national emergency. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. This is not a test. A nuclear attack is occurring against the United States. 4 nuclear missiles have been launched from unknown locations and are expected to strike the United States within the next 15 minutes. Due to the uncertain tracks of these missiles, all residents of the United States should seek out and prepare to take shelter immediately.
Stand by for a message from the President of the United States.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
To panic unless you have to is a terrible idea. But when your house is on fire and you want to keep your house from burning to the ground, then that does require some level of panic.
Life in capitalism is hard. It's a constant struggle in competition with others. No institution or person gives you the basic things that you need to flourish without your fighting to get them. Success under those circumstances requires enormous amounts of support early in life and deep into adulthood.
We need social democracy. Social democracy means tax yourselves heavily and ensure universal access to economic needs as the basic philosophy, and also have a social ethos that if you're rich, you're a little bit suspicious. And if you're rich and greedy, you're outside the social norm.
Our job is not to divide. Our job is to bring people together.
That's really what you want in life. You want to feel connected. You want to feel relevant. You want to feel like you're a participant in the goings-on of activities and events around you. That's precisely what we are, just by being alive.
There's huge opportunities. It is a very free society, still the freest in the world.
Government has very limited capacity to coerce. Corporate business may try to coerce, but they don't have the mechanism. So there's a lot that can be done if people organize, struggle for their rights as they've done in the past, and they can win many victories.
You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite.
It underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.